20 of Agencyphonics. Pete, we made it 20 episodes.
We did. Not been fired yet. That's good.
Yeah. And thank you everyone who's been supporting us. I think it's taken us almost to the end of lockdown to finally nail the tech without having a lag and streaming live at the same time. So we'll probably be back in the studio for the next couple. And
so
as always, you solve the problems towards the end. So welcome everybody. I haven't really said this in a long time, but the reason we started Agencyphonics, just as a reminder for those of you who are new listeners, we have quite a lot these days, was because our book editor, when we wrote our book, I always have a copy just underneath where I'm talking, had said to us, don't cover too many subjects because you want to pick one subject, cover it in depth. And I was fed up with reading books where I kind of got the point of the book after the first 20 pages. And Pete and I both decided that we wanted to give away as much as we could to help other people who were, the now, next, and future of agencies. And so we wrote this book and we tried to cover every subject. But of course, when I look back now, I realized that we didn't really cover every subject in a huge amount of depth. So we started this vodcast as a way to dig deeper into areas and also to hear some real life stories and sort of bring some of the advice that we put in there to life. And some of the advice in here is evolved. And I'm actually really delighted today to announce that we've just agreed that we're going to be creating a new updated version of the book. Obviously, post-COVID, the world's changed a bit. Some of the content in here definitely will be moving forwards. And so we're really looking forward to releasing that hopefully later on this year. So today's part of the book that we're going to cover is it's a section called The Wood from the Trees, which is towards the back of the book. And it's the area where we talk about the 4 types of non-execs. So we have mentors, business advisors, non-execs, and then sort of professional and personal coaches. And we cover off a small section really explaining the difference between those 4 types. And so it gives me great pleasure today to introduce Susanna Simpson. And because Susanna Simpson, who, for those of you who don't know, she is the founder of an agency called Limelight, which she founded back in 2002. As all good businesses are, started in a downturn. And she sold the business. She grew a very successful PR agency, and she sold it in 2012. It's now called, 2018. 18. Yeah. That's right. And actually, the agency is now been called Definition. Is that right? It's kind of folded into the bigger company now. And Susanna's actually decided to switch sides of the table. And so I wanted to bring her in today because one thing I've observed about Susanna, I've known her for quite a few years through her career, is that she's always had this amazing ability to surround herself with great people. So I want to really dig deeper into the areas of the advisors that she's had, the kind of the people. Was it the Jim Rohn thing? If you are the sum of the 5 people you know. But I think Susanna's got some really great examples of really the importance of bringing the right people around you. I've also got a few stories I'd like to weave in, actually. I think some really good examples of sometimes when we've met each other in situations and some lessons to learn from that. So, yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. And one of the things when I most talk about you is I always talk about the time when I left my agency and we were like about $500,000 down on our sales target. And one night I went out to I think it was a supper club event, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
We were at a supper club networking event. And I remember saying to you, I haven't told anyone in the world, but I'm going to be leaving the agency in the next week. And she, how's it going? And you said, how's it going? I said, it's actually been quite a tough quarter. I don't know whether it's because I'm going, there's been a lack of focus or what, but I said, I've got this one big deal on. And anyway, between us, we figured out that you were almost like really close friends with the person. And so you put a really kind word in and said, oh yeah, Spencer's a really good guy, Blue Halo, good people to trust. And so as I left the company, we won this £500,000 deal thanks to you. So I'm always truly grateful for that moment. So tell us about your journey, please.
My journey. So always wanted a business when I was 8. I remember being taken, I think what ignited it, my father had to take me to his office one day, and he was in business himself. And I would, 8 years old, and I was sent to his office with a sewing kit that my granny had given me. And I think expected to sit there and dutifully sit in the corner quietly and sew for the day. And I walked into this London office, and I was just wowed by it. I had no idea what was going on, but I was impressed by, in the time in the 80s then, what people were wearing, what they were moving. And so I just got the bug and the taste for being around it then. So it was like, I will have my business. All my childhood games were not playing with dolls. They were turning the garage into an office. Monopoly. Exactly. No, my sisters, I had managing director on my desk when I was 8. My sisters, PAs, all of these kind of games, which I think you hear this a lot with people.
Was your parents, were they like the in-house cooks and stuff? Like, when you see like people in business have celebrity chefs come in, is that what you were treating them? I tried
on that. Yeah. I think, that,
take it a bit far.
Take a bit far, yes. But they did give me the garage to turn into my company, which I don't remember what it did. Oh. But what that led to then, I went to school, got on fine, but I did work experience when I was about 16 years old in a bunch of places, actually. I was really fortunate to do work experience at Radio 1 when they were bringing Chris Evans in to save the station. So I had a couple of weeks there with the marketing director, an ad agency where just seemed to be wore leather trousers and that's what you did. And there was that sort of just didn't grab me. And then I went to an international PR company, and they just gave me real work experience. They took me into meetings. I was so grateful to them. I thought, this is it. This is for me. You got to be around successful people, chief executives, because they were the people speaking to the media. So the exposure to learning about different people's businesses that you got at the same time was just extraordinary. And I mean, I didn't get paid then, but ultimately you got paid to do that. So therefore, my company was going to be a PR agency. I worked for a couple of agencies, good experiences and bad experiences. And then I got promoted to a junior account manager. And to be honest, I was a little bit cross about having junior put on my title.
Can I just ask a question? What's below a junior account manager? Is it like an
account executive, senior account executive?
Wow, okay.
I was, what would I be, 20 at this time, turned 21 there. And I said in the interview for this job, when you're asked about your ambitions, I said, I would like to work here for a few years and then I'm going to leave and set up my own agency. And he kind of went, okay. Anyway, I did. So
where was your first office?
First office was dining room table at my house in Surrey. So I had remortgaged my house, pretended I was buying a new bathroom, but used the money to buy the first sort of initial $5,000 I needed to get going. All the banks said no, of course. I don't know how much that's changed these days. I did it on that and an egg credit card. And then after a week, I hated it, being alone at home, like we all are all the time at the moment.
It's funny, I had the same experience when I had my business as well. I left Blue Halo and went to a little office in Petersfield, and the first morning there, sat on my own, I was almost in tears. I was like, what have I done? This is the stupidest decision ever. It's quite lonely.
But I think also on that first day was my first big lesson. So by midday on the first day of trading from my kitchen table, I pretty much almost went bust. So I had three founding clients, and throughout the morning they all pulled out. And I thought, gosh, this is spectacularly embarrassing. I'm going to have to recover this. Who fails by lunchtime on the first day? So anyway, that's another story. But that's where selling, networking, getting out there and doing that saved that. So I then, very quickly after that first week, then went and rented a desk in Victoria in London, where my father had an office. So I rented a corner of his. And what was great is over the first few years, he was starting to scale back his business and mine was growing. So every few months we'd knock down another wall and I'd rent another bit. No grace and favour. It was all, I had to pay him top London rates and all of that. But it was great. Just being there, the sense of going to work and having some people around was really key.
Yeah. And so So in those early days, did you have anyone to help you externally? You know, I mean, roughly how many people were you when you were in Victoria? That's still yourself, or was there a couple of you? Or
day one, month one was me.
Yeah.
Month two, I hired an account director. So quite senior first hire.
Yeah.
Paying her 3 times what I was taking. Well, I wasn't taking anything quite yet.
Yeah.
And that was a good hire. And then by month 3 or 4, I had about 5 or 6 people to my memory. So that made a big difference.
Did you have any outside help at that stage? Did you have anyone? Was there any sort? I mean, obviously you worked in a couple of PR companies, so you kind of saw some things, probably the good and the bad things, as you say, that you wanted to make sure in your own utopia or your own business you wouldn't recreate. But did you get any help at all? Did your dad help you or not? Did he give you any advice?
In the first year, I mean, I think my father had been a great role model, and I'd always seen him going to work and seen him being self-employed. But in 2002, there's an abundance now, which we'll come on to, but there actually wasn't really any help out there. I remember Business Link existed, and I remember having a meeting with a person from Business Link, and bearing in mind I was 22 years old, I just remember being completely uninspired and underwhelmed, and that was it. And I hadn't started networking particularly then from the business sector, but I did know lots of people. So I had built a network through my jobs before of clients and journalists and things like that. But being honest, no, it was pretty much on my own at the beginning.
It's funny how the world, you're right, how it's changed. Because if I think back to, I mean, I started a couple of years, 3 years before you in 1999. And I remember going to my bank and getting a bank account. And the first thing they did was they sent me to the Business Link person. And I was in Camberley in Surrey. And I remember going over the road. It was almost like, I think he was in the job centre building or something anyway. So I went in, and I swear to you, the guy was 90 years old. And he sat opposite me, and he was there to give me advice. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I've set up a business building websites. I don't think he really knew what they were.
No, he's first website.
Yeah. And he said, what you should do is you should speak to the NHS. So I'm sitting there as a one-man band going, I've got to go and speak to the NHS. That's the only advice you can give me for business. I don't think they're going to speak to me. Do you? Anyway, so yeah, it was very shocking. And it is, you're right. We'll talk probably a bit more about it, but how the world has changed in, it maybe sometimes I look at it and I go, it seems like a long time, the last 20 years, but actually it's gone very quickly, and actually the changes have happened very, very fast as well. So you started networking early on, and did you figure out quite early that networking was good for your business, for new business, and to help you find clients? Or
I think I quickly realized it was massively valuable, but as a person, I've always naturally just loved meeting other people and making new connections and things like that. So to me, it was just like, well, I'm just socializing and having fun and meeting people like that. And I had great rapport with people. There was a lot of depth to my relationships. I kept in touch, and I just love being around other people and love meeting new people. So actually, I had lots of support and lots of clients, apart from the first day. Sign up quite quickly, and spread the word and help recommend me. And then very quickly, I realised, actually, this is just how I do it. I didn't learn it out of a book or watch it on a seminar. It was just but it has been the absolute staple of everything I have achieved.
Yeah. And so the Supper Club must have come because you were a very early member. For those of you who are listening who don't know, the Supper Club is a networking group in London. The businesses in there, the members are not, they're sort of, when you start networking, when you start your business, often you go to these kind of small business BNI, local sort of networking events like the FSB and Federation of Small Business, and then eventually you kind of work your way up and you find almost sort of slightly larger business networks. Like there's things like Vistage out there and other things where it's not necessarily all about necessarily networking and finding new business, but it's a lot about learning and sharing experiences. And the Supper Club has been, a fantastic organization. Duncan Cheetle, we both know very well. And he set that up in sort of early to mid 2000s. And you were like one of the founding members, I believe. Is that right?
I was. I mean, I was lucky enough to get in, I think, to the initial first 12. I don't think I strictly met the size of turnover of business criteria at the time, but I just won the Young PR Professional of the Year award, and so they were like, okay, come in, and I was introduced by another client of mine, so that was really fortunate. And there were 12 of us, and we would have dinner, and it was my first introduction to peer-to-peer learning and mentoring, and it was just. At that stage, having just started Limelight, it was very much, they have an ethos of give and get, and I just got for quite a long time initially. And you'd go in this room and say, I've got this problem with the finances, or this person isn't working out, and someone around the table, because they were all also entrepreneurs, had been through it and could understand it in the way that a bank manager or a lawyer has never actually been in that exact position of being purely self-employed and starting up on their own. So it was massively valuable. And also just a depth of where you can combine, I think, business and a personal relationship. I mean, that was just so strong, and I'm still very involved in that and chair lots of things for them. But it's been, big influence and a real eye-opener to a great way to learn.
Yeah, and what's interesting as well about that story is that, you found your way into a network that was almost a little bit out of your, let's say, size, the sort of the criteria to be a member, but you did it because you obviously were quite a good networker. You obviously made some good connections, and that helped you find the Supper Club. And I think it's quite important to always say to people that, when you are networking, don't be afraid to ask people where else they go networking, right? And where else do you go, and try to, because a lot of these very, what I call sort of more premium type groups of networks, they're not always as easy to access. They're always a little bit more, they're not, people don't shout about them as much. And so it's quite interesting that you found yourself in there, obviously because you were very good at networking early on. And actually the Supper Club now must be several hundred entrepreneurs, right? So it's a much, much larger organization.
Huge amount, definitely. And I think what I really like about it and the type of networking I do is, interesting. I haven't spent years networking in the PR industry. I've just spent years networking with interesting business people. Lots of them happen to be in the agency and creative space, but lots in tech, manufacturing. I've always just wanted to meet interesting business people and build relationships, and always help them and they help me. And the reciprocity thing, I'm a massive believer in. And you don't go and sell, you just go and meet great people who are in a similar situation to you. And you know what? The business just comes from that.
Yeah.
That bit just happens.
Yeah, it's great. And so at what point did you, so there's a couple of things that I always remember about you. One was that you had almost, so I read this book by some of the listeners may have read this book. It's called Living with a Seal, and I don't mean an animal. I mean like a Navy SEAL. And the guy who wrote the book's called Jesse Isler, and he was a very tenacious entrepreneur, let's say, in his younger. He has this fantastic story where he in his book where he was trying to sell to a certain audience at one point, and he realized before the exhibition they all went into Starbucks in the morning and got a coffee and a donut. So he went in at 6 o'clock in the morning and he bought every single donut off the shelf and he put it onto his table. So when all the executives came in the morning for their coffee and donuts, they would say there's no donuts. He's bought them all, and then they'd have to go over and speak to him. And he'd say, well, if you give me 5 minutes, I'll give you a donut. And so that was the way that he got to meet everyone. So I love that tenacity. And I sometimes think that there's a lost art of tenacity and tenacious behavior from entrepreneurs. But he, in his book, he's actually married to to Sarah Blakely, who is the billionairess founder of Spanx. And he talks about the two of them, how they had this small, close-knit group of friends who almost acted slightly as accountability. They would share their plans with each other, and there was an element of accountability. And you had a similar sort of group, didn't you, to that, where did that come out of the supper club, the people that you met there, or was it just generally your network?
A mixture of both.
Friends, yeah.
Certainly.
It's called Sevens, right? Is that right? Sevens?
Yeah, and it's called Sevens. Because there are 7 of us. We're all self-employed. We all get on really well, and we are checking with each other in terms of our whole lives. You know, I used to call them my sort of urban London family, and that it very much feels like that. And we've been meeting. I mean, it's a bit tricky at the moment, but meeting, connecting. Probably for 10 years now. But the original idea almost originates from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. He talks about the benefit of a mastermind group. And I wouldn't say we're that formal, but we are always on it. When one's down, the others help. I always used to get us to do our goals each year. So let's write them down. Then we've written them down in front of each other. And there's no coincidence. If they get written down, they happen. And I also think... I really believe I think it's the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's really, really important to me, and really, really key. I think there's also, in life, there's radiators and drainers, and drainers, you can walk into a room, be around them, speak to them, and it just brings you down. And I just try and remove them politely without noticing as soon as possible. But being around positive, radiating people that have good energy and that stuff, and want to help and want to do well themselves, that makes a difference. Same in sport, if you play tennis with someone better than you play better. So I've always tried to surround myself with people that are much, much better than me.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at Babington House last year with one of my closest sort of groups of friends who actually I've all met through business, and they've sort of gone from being competitors, back in the sort of late, I guess the sort of 2000, before the 2010 started, so 10 years ago, and we all gravitated towards each other, became friends, outside of agency life. There are 6 of us in total, and all of us have actually gone on to sell our businesses. And, I said, Pete and I often say it's about a 1 in 300 to 400 chance that you're going to sell your business as an owner. And to have a group of friends where you've all sold your business, it's quite weird, but it just goes to show that there's and no one, everyone's supportive in my friendship group. No one is jealous or envious of other people's success. Everyone has different levels of success, but we're all just supportive of each other. And it's really, I think it's nice. It's a really good piece of advice if you can bring together a small group of you like-minded that can meet that. And do you guys still meet on a regular basis? Is it more ad hoc now, or is it like a formal thing, or do you meet every quarter or every month, or?
It used to be very scheduled. It's much more ad hoc now. I think as we've all had children, got married, all that's changed. People have moved out of London. We have a WhatsApp group, which there is something on every single day. And we've done a few Zooms whilst we've all been stuck at home. Actually, we've almost talked more in some ways at the moment, which has been quite interesting. And then we'll have we don't make it too formal, so it's called Sevens, but often there might be a dinner of 4s or 3s or 5s, because some members live in different countries and that stuff. But we always come back to each other.
Yeah, and the other thing that I always remember about when I sort of met you around that time was you used to get on this plane and go over to Canada and join this kind of what was it called? It was a 10X. Was it 10X or something? Yeah. Dan Sullivan, his company Strategic Coach. How that came about is actually it links back to a piece of business I referred to you for at the beginning, your $500,000 deal. Okay. So the client that I introduced you to, he at the time, this would be 2009, was the most successful person I knew. I was just very, very impressed by him in all aspects of his life. So I took him out to lunch and said, tell me the secrets of your success, ready to sort of write notes
all afternoon. And he just said at the beginning, he introduced me to this company, Strategic Coach. And it was like a school for entrepreneurs. And it was based on his, I just signed up and did it. They tried to explain how it works. I was like, no, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And that's really where I learned sort of process, structure, more peer-to-peer learning because it was in a workshop environment. You did a sort of 1 day a quarter. So I would fly to Toronto to do this. People were like, what?
I know. I remember thinking I was quite, but not, envious and jealous in a nice way, but thinking, wow, you get to go on a plane and go somewhere else and get a bit of American or Canadian woo-ha, so.
I mean, I like the woo-ha. I think we're getting a lot better, but I'm big into personal development from a young age and always into that. So going there, they are better than us at it. But some people say the flying seems extreme, but if you think about it, every quarter I had 3 days working on my business and my life. So you'd come out with a quarterly plan, goals, lifetime goals. You would do various exercises on all sorts of things. But I got a whole day on my own on the plane to think, which is very hard to do at home, in your office, in your busy life between meetings. A whole day with 40 other entrepreneurs, and then a whole day coming back to help follow through on everything that I decided. But it was good being there as well because just the scale is different to the UK. So, all the problems are the same, but the numbers are different.
Yeah. A lot of people listening would have listened to or would have read, a book called Get a Grip. Or Traction, and actually if you look at the foreword in that book, it's actually by Dan Sullivan. He's the action coach. So yeah, and I still a couple of years ago I met someone who's just signed up and gone over, so it's still going quite strong. But I love Pete and I are big fans, aren't we, Pete, of going to America when we go to South by Southwest to get distance, time to think, as you say.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you were saying there. And I could almost mind read Spencer thinking in the same thing, because we try and do it 3 times a year, but sometimes it's 2 times a year. Go away for 3 or 4 days. And just as you said, just think about your own business. And the distance does help. It was 3 or 4 months ago, we went to Scotland. We had a whole day in the car there chatting about work, a whole day on the way back, as you said. And, 2 or 3 days just focused on what we're doing. I think it's extremely valuable.
I think we get more done in those 3 days than we do often in 6 months. It's always good. And I think going to America is really good as well, though, because when you go there, I don't know what it is, or North America generally, you suddenly, there's a lot of adoption in America that is slightly ahead. In fact, I was talking to someone yesterday morning who was sort of stuck between companies, and I said to him, try and get some distance, just go somewhere. America's great because they're early adopters. I mean, they're behind in many ways, but they're normally, the consumer adoption is ahead. So when you go there, you can kind of get some really good ideas on what's happening next in whatever you do, the areas. And so I always think that's quite a good thing to do. So yeah.
When things wasn't America, it was Kent. A couple of years ago, I got really busy at the agency in the run up to selling it, and I had a point of overwhelm I had so much work, I don't know how to get through it. So I got my husband kindly went away for the weekend. I got my parents to come to my house and look after our son and the dog, and I went to their house for the whole weekend on my own, different place. Nothing was calling on me, and just there, and I did about 2 weeks of work in a couple of days. And
I think Pete and I, when we did the book, we went to Bournemouth for some time, just to go down there and just get away from everything, turn the computers off, and just just only have something up to write in. So you are right. I mean, that's even the Scotland trip we had was useful, although we couldn't get on an airplane because of COVID, so we had to drive up. It was just before lockdown, which is quite fun. But yeah, I think you're right. It's just trying to find places, like sometimes we go to Soho Farmhouse, have board meetings there, somewhere just a bit more in the country, a bit out, high ceilings, all that stuff really helps, I think.
The other thing I like is when you're coming up with your goals, is always making sure it's in an inspirational place. So I'll always do my goals on holiday or something. I know it's a bit tricky at the moment, but Yeah, so whether it's Soho Farmhouse, whether it's in the Caribbean, whether it's in France somewhere, whether it's in an amazing stately home or something, but going somewhere that just lifts you and makes you do better.
I totally agree with that. I mean, number one, it's a little bit more inspiration for the thinking, but number two, I think the environment helps kind of fuse the ideas a bit more. You can kind of imagine yourself, you remember where you were sat when you had the idea as well, but it doesn't quite work if you're in the garden.
No.
For the last 100 days.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So at that point, had you had much experience with outside non-execs or coaches or advisors? You know, when was your first experience with something maybe more personal, more formal to the business and you?
Well, the other thing is going back to, you know, this love self-development, can always learn, can always do more. I invested in non-execs advisors very early on, at the end of the first year.
Okay.
So I did the first year with no business plan other than, well, let's have a go at this. And I thought, and I was winning new business every month, hiring people. And I thought, well, this is interesting. This is clarify. I thought, what if someone knew more than me, or people will know more than me, and what if I had some help as well? I wonder what I could achieve then. So I hired my very first boss. So the person that was the MD of the agency that I did work experience with, that wouldn't ultimately employ me because I didn't have a degree. Just saying. So he had since retired. So I hired him, and so worked with him for probably only a year actually. But he helped give me some structure and things like that. And then I think what you find is you can outgrow advisors as well. So for him, for a year, with structure and finance and that stuff, he was really good. Perhaps with the culture and the people part, not so much. And so then stopped with him. I would always try and pick different advisors according to what I needed at the time. So if I wanted to get into bigger corporates, you know, I hired someone from the BBC who'd run the BBC before. Then when I wanted a lot more help on the finance, I hired someone that was really good at that. But actually, there was then one consistent person, Roger Jennings, who I always came back to. Always. And actually, he helped to sell my business ultimately. And there was just a chemistry, a trust there. He charged me at the beginning what I would charge myself out as, and then that grew over the years. But always came back to him because that personal relationship was so important. But there's not one year, I don't think, with 16 years of Limelight where I didn't have a paid non-exec advisor on the business ever.
Yeah. I think also when I look at, I said the other day about looking at my friends, I'm pretty sure that almost, I think actually maybe only one of the five didn't have, that I know of, didn't have any non-exec. So it definitely seemed to me that the people that I know have been successful. I think it's because they're not afraid to learn things and be taught something new. And also sometimes, as you know, you get stuck in the business, you can't see the real picture because you're so ingrained in it, whereas a fresh pair of eyes is really valuable. And I think that definitely is a trait. And I'm not just saying that because it's what I do for a living, but when I look at the people that are most successful, they always seem to have good advisors around them. So it's interesting that you say the same thing as well, having built and sold your business. So it's good to hear that.
And I always hired my own boss, and I always hired someone with a lot more experience than me. And that was really, really valuable. Yeah,
I think also whenever I met you over the years, I always remember, you know, you're one of those people, you're always a very good listener, you know, and sometimes you meet people and you're probably going to find this now in your new roles.
I can't say that, but.
Well, yeah, sorry, David. But you know, you will probably find that it's there's a saying Pete and I use a lot. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but what we find sometimes is that actually some people just don't want to listen at all. They know everything, and some people are just, I mean, I still learn new things every single day, but it's you can't stop learning. And I think on the whole, most people know that now, but you might find in your new role on the other side of the table now that you get people, just listen to me. I'm telling you something that's really important. You need to hear.
We'll probably end up counselling you on that stuff at some point, I'm sure. But don't worry, that's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple other things that I really wanted to talk about, which first of all was when I sold my business and I stopped working, I actually met you. I went round and I had a series of lunches with everybody in my network, because I had this kind of almost imminent fear that the longer I wasn't working, and I was like technically retired at 38, 39, 40, somewhere. I sold at 38, about 40, but I knew I would do something else, but I didn't know what. And so I was at home and I remember being really bored going, I'm going to lose all my contacts. I'm going to lose all my network. If I stay at home any longer, I'm just going to find myself with nobody. So I remember contacting everybody and taking people out for lunch. And a bit like you said about, finding the most successful people as well. And so I went around, had a series of lunches in London, and you were one of those lunches. And do you remember that lunch?
Was it Roker?
No, it wasn't. It was on that street off Regent Street, where the ice bar is.
Yes, Head and Seat.
Oh, yeah. It was.
To be sitting out there now, hey?
Yeah, gosh, I bet it's quiet there now. Although knowing what it's like whenever I leave my house, it seems really busy outside these days. But and it was funny because I wasn't at that stage even thinking about helping other agencies. Like for me, I was going to do a children's wallpaper business with my wife. We were going to do something completely different. I'd almost had enough of agencies. It was a tough end. But I remember, and Pete had gone off and he'd set his own business up, set up his own accountancy firm after we both left Gyro. And I remember meeting you, and you gave me 2 books. One was, in fact, you did a very clever thing. You told me 2 books, and then I got home about 2 days later, and they arrived in the post, which actually these days is quite common. People saying, but back then people weren't that thoughtful. They didn't really send you books, when you had a conversation. And one of them was, it was actually 3 things you sent me. The first one was Pitching to Win by David Keane. I swear to you, since you gave me that book, Pete and I, how many books? We must hundreds. We must have.
He's retired now, so that says it all.
Yeah, I wrote to him once. I said, David, if your book sales have gone up recently, it's because of me. Because I swear, like every talk I did, I was going, if you own an agency, buy this book. And it's funny because I'd never, in all the years I'd run my agency, built it and sold it, I never read that book. And then I read it. I almost cried because I was like, I wish I knew this at the beginning, because it was one. So, and then the other book that he wrote was How to Win Friends and Influence Profits. We'll put the books in the show notes. But I think they're essential reading for anyone with an agency, because at some point you end up in a pitch. And if you've ever come second in a pitch, it was when I read this bit and it went, and if you've ever been told you came second, you lost. And it was the fact that he made that point that you didn't come second, you lost it. And so actually, because now Pete and I are non-execs, right? And you are as well. What you're going to notice maybe at some point is you'll go in one day to a client, and it doesn't happen often, this, by the way, but you'll find that they both pitch for the same piece of work and they both got told they came second. And then you realize that the client just told everyone they came second because they didn't want them to feel bad. And the moment you hear that the first 2 or 3 times, you realize that you lost the pitch. Mm-hmm. So, and then the third book, and I remember we spoke about Tony Robbins, and at the time because I've always been quite an excitable person and positive energy. Whenever I listened to Tony Robbins, I used to go, oh, it was this clash of not egos, but a clash of kind of like positiveness. Like, the two of us, I would listen to him and go, oh, he's just too positive. I'm positive. I don't need you, But actually, you said, oh, you should listen to Jim Rohn then. And it's funny because Jim Rohn now, I think, because of social media, has become quite famous because he's everywhere, right? Mm. But I listened to The Art of Successful Living, which I think you sent me on a CD. I've got 5 copies in my house. If one person listening wants to listen to and has a CD player, because not many. Pete, have you got a CD player?
Yeah, I'm still using Betamax as well, so I'd have a CD.
So if anyone wants to listen to this, I remember you said to me, when he talks, it's a little bit like he talks like, how does he talk? Do you remember how he goes, well, I'm Jim Rohn and I talk. He's like this really kind of, American deep. I don't know what county. Of course. Yeah, he exaggerates every way. He sounds a bit weird. I remember you saying to me, he sounds a bit weird, but he's really good. And I listened to it, and I have to say, it really connected with me so much. Like, to hear his story, I resonated a lot with my own story, actually, because it was, he'd really turned his life around, and I related to a lot of the things that he did in there. So I always say thank you for that. And actually today I have become a fan of Tony Robbins. So I now listen to him all the time and his podcasts, and because actually I see how he helps so many other people who need that uplift of injection of positivity. But you actually went on the Tony Robbins?
Yeah, I forgot this at the beginning. I need to say a bigger thank you to my father. So I've failed my A-levels twice, I say. Well, I've got the same A-level twice, and I got no better. I went back, and I should never have gone back, and did no better the second time. But what I now know is that actually I was just sort of done with the studying bit, and I'd had the taste of PR and wanted to be out there. But age 19, my father came back from doing Unlimited Power with Tony Robbins and was all ready to go. And he took the whole family. So my sisters were 16, my mum, a Latin and ancient Greek teacher. You can imagine how she felt about it. And half of the family loved it, half of them sort of hated it. But for me, just the timing of that was just amazing. And if there is one thing that I took from that, it was belief, which every day I did the firewalk, which is amazing. I mean, it is, if you're thinking, you're like, well, I did walk on fire, and I did go around afterwards and check it was real and all of that stuff, and it's real, but don't do it in your garden in lockdown.
A safety warning appearing on here.
It's not necessary to do it at home. But the belief thing, so therefore when anything did fail, or at the beginning of, Limelight or anything like this, just like, the bank said no, this person said no, you have to hear a lot of no's at the beginning, don't you? It would always be like, no, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And that really intrigued me. But only then later on did I find out that actually Jim Rohn was Tony Robbins' mentor.
Yeah.
We're laughing about those CDs. And the reason I sent you CDs is because the correct recording, The Art of Exceptional Living, is the one. There's loads that you can download online, but they're not as good as that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've managed to digitize that, but...
do you know, I think if you go on YouTube, I think I might have managed to find it, actually, not long ago. But you're right, it's really hard to find.
We can share a picture of after, I'm sure, but it's so rare and so good. And it's something you can always go back to as well, so yeah.
You got 5 then, Spencer?
I think I have. Only because I did my lockdown clear outs. Like, has everyone else been doing? Did you do a lockdown clear outs?
Yes.
Yeah, ish. I had 3 skips here, and we were binning old stuff that we've hoarded for 20 years, and I even found old Blue Halo business cards and things like that, and probably some accounting stuff. We binned all that, Pete. And so, but actually, I found these 5 copies. I think I remember thinking, these are really hard to get hold of. I'm going to have a few. And so, but I've got no CD player in the house, so I can't play them. So it is. I think it is on YouTube, actually. But I actually went and bought on iTunes or one of those things. Another one of Jim Rohn's, but it wasn't, as you say, it's not the same. It's not the same. And so
if anyone watching listens to that, his voice is so extraordinary, shall we say. Give it half an hour. You have to give it half an hour, and then you won't notice. But the first half an hour is hard to get over the accent.
He has this great thing he says in it. I was just trying to recall it now. It's something like, if you ever get to the end of the month and there's more days in the month than money in your pocket, or something like that. Is there something like that? It's like, it's just a really great way of doing it. But it's, it was a very inspiring person, certainly. So so now you're going to do non-exec work. The tables have turned, and
I think I'm going to sit on both sides of the table, which I hope is
okay.
So I've still got shareholding in my old agency, and I'm quite an active shareholder there. But I have had the gift of more time, and it's interestingly lockdown. Having been missing in action for 12 weeks of it, doing full-time childcare at home, it's made me realise that I definitely would like to work a bit more as well. As lovely as the time.
Yeah, some people go either way, don't they? They're either like, I just want to stay at home forever, or no, I need to get out and join the world again. So
it's great. I had the maternity leave I never got when he was born, so that was great. And now it's like, okay, maternity leave's over. So also just love being around lots of entrepreneurs. And now with Definition, because I'm not running the business anymore, there's someone much better than me doing that. I've just always been, such a fan of having a great network, such a fan of learning from books, from coaching, from investment in myself, from other people. And lots of people had asked me, and I'd really love to help, if only by sharing everything that I did wrong.
Well, I think that's probably most of what we do, isn't it, Pete? We share all the muck-ups and.
Well, I like the financing story at the beginning. Your mortgage company must have thought you had about 10 bathrooms fitted over the years then.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I did gloss over that somewhat, but yeah.
There was, Pete, there was a funny story. When I spoke to Susanna yesterday, caught up, and she said, I just read the show pre-notes, and it says in there that it's okay to swear, but you can't mention the C word. She goes, I take it that's the coronavirus word. And I said, no, it's not. It's the other C word. So anyway, so tell me. So one thing I can't let you kind of be on this show and get away with not sharing is because I think when Pete and I go into agencies, there's probably two camps of people. There's the people who naturally love meeting people and networking, and then there's those who just see it as this kind of horrible, fearful thing. I mean, what have you got? Any kind of what are your best pieces of advice around? We call it socializing in our book because, we try to lose that horrible word. Yeah. But have you got any tips, any advice for people from all the things you've done? Because I think you do. As I said, I've met you through networking, and I can see your network of friends are really influential. Like, you have some really quite well connected people in your network as well. Spot now.
I think, loads and loads of people think it's terrifying. I remember, with always trying to encourage agency team to do it. So I think you're spot on with the socializing aspect. That is because that's what it is and how you have to look at it. Number one is, when you walk into one of those rooms, I'm weird because I love walking into a room of people I don't know. To me, that's really exciting. But I realise to many, it's terrifying. So with that aspect, it's know that most people feel exactly like you. And if you go up to talk to someone, they will be so relieved that you have spoken to them, that they'll think, oh, wow, what a confident person. They're amazing. Number two is don't eat the canapes. You're not there to eat canapes, so have something like a sandwich before. Because then the moment you meet the £1 million deal, you'll have a bit of spinach, or you'll be eating and chewing, and it's just not a good look. First impressions. So yes, don't eat the canapes, eat before. And I think you talked at the beginning, you kindly said I was a good listener. Ask questions and listen, and don't actually say anything about yourself. Wait for people to ask back. And then the other thing is then this keeping in touch aspect. So it's putting the other person first. So it's so easy now connecting on LinkedIn. It's great. It all looks after. You've got your database of all your people you know, but just keeping in touch with them. I saw this and thought of you, or this might be interesting. I sent those books to you. I think those books are amazing. That's why I sent them to you. But I could see they would have massive value for you at the time. And the fact is, I think that was probably nearly 10 years ago. And the fact you've mentioned that today is amazing.
It shows how memorable it is.
Yeah.
That actually, I think that lesson is one that to definitely share, which is when you meet somebody, make a note of when you talk to them of how you think you can help them, and then don't always do it there that night, like that evening or that lunchtime or that morning or whatever it is. Actually, go the next day, send the thank you or whatever you're going to do, the book or the recommendation, because it I think it shows that you've thought about someone and it's more memorable. And it's not being unauthentic. It's just, and as you say, it's about creating memorable experiences and connections as well. So I really love that. Would you say that you sort of tended to then do your socializing around things that interested you the most, or did you? And I'm not trying to make this a leading question, but I did an interview with Phil Jones recently, and I loved that he almost created friendship type scenarios. Like he would create, for him it was sports, I mean, Pete likes to do golf, don't you? That's how you get to meet people.
I do golf day every year. That's my kind of networking, to be honest.
Yeah, he plays golf.
Wine tasting as well, if anyone's listening. So
I'm going for that one. I mean, that's really important. That's that's Robert Cialdini's thing about social proof, isn't it? Which I know you mentioned in the back of Agencyphonics as a good read, and that it's about people like being around people that like similar things. So finding that common ground, whether it's golf or wine or music. So I would often, it would be supper club has been a huge part of my networking, but then you meet people and they introduce you to other people and invite you to other things. And so the like-minded people is a key thing, but then also thinking about where you like being and where those people are. So I used to do quite a lot of track driving. So I went on car rallies and track days, and then you have the car thing in common, and then the business thing just often falls out the back of it. And then the other networking thing that I always say is I always found planes, not anymore in light of the C word, but planes are a great place to network if you're traveling on your own. So I would always, even when I couldn't afford it, buy a ticket to try and turn left. And, initially it was very much in premium economy. And I would go there because I know if I was sitting on my own on a certain flight, there'd be other people. I mean, I met 3 or 4 connections on aeroplanes to and from Canada, but you don't tend to meet them in economy. So borrow a bit of money and move up the plane, and then you've got all of this, then they're the budget holders, they're all sitting there. So then I met some great contacts who are still contacts today.
Yeah, I think I remember you telling me that you'd won a piece of business on one of your flights that you did a few years ago, that's a great story as well.
There's something about being in an environment as well, perhaps with limited oxygen for many hours and wine on the plane or something, that makes just people connect quicker and things like that. So it's, same situation, same interest.
I've always believed, actually, if you go on a journey with somebody, you create a more memorable experience as well. And who was it? Someone we know was it Ollie Barrett? Someone did getting on a train down to Bristol and did some kind of networking. Was that him? Was that somebody else we know?
Those, but that's an interesting story because I met Ollie Barrett, and he's one of my 7s, as is Tiffany St James. He just launched the fantastic online course.
Yeah.
But Ollie and I met in Barbados on a trip organised by Duncan Cheadle. And so there were 9 entrepreneurs in Barbados for a week, just total immersion together in this shared experience that we all talk about for the rest of our lives.
Can I just say something quickly? We need to up our trip game. Like, you've been to Barbados, we went to Scotland.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about.
You're in charge of the finances. Make it happen.
Yeah, I've made a note to self. Don't worry.
But again, it's a good example there, isn't it? Having Ollie Barrett in your immediate network. Was it the most connected person in the UK, according to GQ a few years ago? Having a super connected like him in your network is always going to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
So look, we've really enjoyed talking to you today, and it's really great to hear some really good stories. I particularly like the reference to Napoleon Hill because I think I spent my whole I know Peter's bored of me telling him all the time this, but this whole kind of, your biggest success comes one step beyond the point of failure was a Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich story. And I think that's been, we talk about mantras. It's always been the one mantra that has kept me going when things get a bit tough. You got to believe that the next day something good will happen. And if you stay positive, it will.
Often does.
Sorry?
Often does.
Yeah, I mean, what year was that book actually written? Do you know what year that book was written? I think it was like 1927. Look, I love the fact
that here and get it, but yes,
get a copy.
The 20s.
Yeah, like 100 years old and still full of loads of wisdom. Yeah. So, but look, it's been a pleasure having you with us today, and thank you so much. And I wish you all the best of luck with your journey as a non-exec.
Thank you, and looking forward to working with you and helping people.
Yeah, it'll be great. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you found that a good episode, and we will be tuning in soon. I just want to say, as always, a massive thank you to Simon Green and to everyone at Wirehive who helps support this show and makes it happen. The great news is that Caitlin, who was our part-time producer, who was actually a student of our local tech college, who has got, because of COVID, got school year cut short. We've actually just recruited Caitlin to come on board and work with us now. So we actually have a producer, Pete, now full-time in our hands, which is going to be very useful.
I'm so relieved. I mean, the ones that I used to do talk about nerve-wracking, and I was trying to jump in with the questioning. You're like Michael Parkinson doing this in the agency world, and I'm like, do you remember Donna Eyre when she asked how the cause met?
Yes.
That's what I would like with these, so I'm really relieved to focus on that, and I can now think of some decent questions while we have these chats, so delighted.
Yeah, and so just but thank you to Simon, who's been superb at supporting Caitlin as well. And I think it's been fantastic to have him behind the scenes making all this work. And so, as always, please check out wirehive.com, have a look at them, and if you have an opportunity to work with them, it helps towards funding this show. Thank you, because we steal their studio time a lot. So listen, thanks everyone. Have a great day, and that's a wrap.